Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Bad Times at the El Royale. This was written and directed by Drew Goddard, the man behind the Daredevil TV series and Cabin in the Woods. It stars Jeff Bridges, Cynthia Erivo, Dakota Johnson, Lewis Pullman, Jon Hamm and Chris Hemsworth. And it's really the story of seven strangers who end up in a Tahoe motel in sort of the middle of nowhere. This place used to be pumping and full of people, now it's very desolate and empty. The film really looks at the seven strangers, how they're not what they seem, how they all have secrets and are hiding things. And the motel itself is not exactly what it seems either. The film then sort of looks at each character through the room number that they're in, and we get to see a bit of backstory with the characters, where they came from and how they ultimately ended up at this hotel in the middle of nowhere. Throughout one night we get to see multiple characters and who they are as people. And we get to learn their secrets and what's going on and why they are there and what is happening in their lives that has transpired for them to ultimately appear at this desolate and isolated hotel. All the mystery and twists and turns lead to an ultimate shocking ending that you don't quite see coming. And it just ultimately shows you who these people truly are. Look, I really like this film. It took a little while for me to sort of get into it, and I really needed to let it sit with me for a bit before I could make this review or really see how I really felt about it. Because a lot happens in it and it should take you by surprise and it goes in different directions. But once you sit with it for a bit, it seems to, I don't know, you seem to get a lot more out of it once you think upon the scenes you really enjoy. I really like the opening sequence. This is a great scene in a hotel room that transpires. Is really well done. And then the introduction of each of the strangers I think is really well done as well, and an impressive look at this sort of people and this world and this sort of film. I love the fact it's set in the 60s. That's an era I really love, especially in cinema. And I like when movies are based in that era. And I think this is a really fascinating, interesting sort of film. It's very different from things I've seen before. It's a very neo-noir sort of film, and I really love those sort of movies and on books, and I really got a lot out of that. I like the synthetic of it. I like the look of it. I like the way the motel looked. I liked it as on a divided line, and on one side of the hotel is California, the other side is Nevada, and it's sort of split down the middle. The way it looks, my hotel looks, it sort of is different on both sides to sort of create that different areas of America. In California, the alcohol costs a little bit more than it does in Nevada. I like it set at this whole hotel in the middle of nowhere, and I think films like this have a great sort of setup. It does take place completely and solely in that hotel. The flashbacks obviously take place at different places, but the main focus of the film stays at this hotel. The set design is really fantastic. The place looks absolutely fantastic, and it really suits that era, and it looks realistic for that time and period. Now the acting. Everybody I think does a really great job here. Some characters don't get enough screen time and deserve a bit more, such as Jon Hamm's character. I think he deserved a little bit more, and I would like to have known a bit more about him within the film, but he just doesn't have enough screen time in order for us to get a real sense of who he is as a person, or his motives or why he's there. Jeff Bridges does a really fantastic job here. He's an actor I've really liked for a very long time, ever since The Big Lebowski, and I think he does a really great job here as his character, Father Daniel Flynn. And he's just really great in it, and you really feel for him. He has a medical condition, and that makes you really feel for him and try and understand him as a person, and you feel a connection with him. He's one of the very few characters you really connect with. The other sort of character you sort of connect with is Darlene, played by Cynthia Erivo. And she's absolutely fantastic. I think she steals the show in this film, to tell you the truth. She plays a singer. She is exactly what she seems, where the other characters aren't quite what they seem. She is exactly what she seems. And she's chasing something she really wants. And she's in this world that she's been pushed around by men and told what she can and can't do. She really shines in this film, trying to break free of that. And she's a really fantastic singer. And they use a lot of her singing as sort of music in a way over particular scenes. And I think that's a great choice. And her and Jeff Bridges have some really great scenes together. And they're the two characters you really get behind and you really want to spend time with. And you sort of wanted them to succeed and get through and accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, but also get through this night that transpires in such a dark way. Dakota Johnson, I think, does a really good job here. I'm not a big fan of her. I still don't buy her, I guess, as an actress. I'm not convinced as her performances. I haven't seen her in anything I've really gone, wow, she's fantastic, until this film. I think she does a really great job here. And I think her character is really interesting and complex and layered, and we get to learn a little bit about her through the film, but not enough to really get a sense of who she is. And due to her actions, it makes it very hard for us to connect with her, but I still think she does a really great job. Lewis Pullman, which is Bill Pullman's son, he does a really great job in this. I was surprised by him. He looks a lot like his father, and when the film sort of begins, he sort of is just this lonely sort of figure at this hotel who pretty much does everything there. Main focus of this thing, and the only person who's occupying this hotel at this present moment when we meet all these characters. And his performance is pretty solid throughout the film. It isn't until the last act that he really shines. There's some really great moments, and you learn a bit about him as well, and his past, and how he sort of ended up at that motel. And also, you learn that he's very capable of things once he gets out of his own road, and he really shines, like I said, in the third act. But really, the character and actor that really sort of steals the show for me is Chris Hemsworth's character, Billy Lee. Billy Lee is sort of, I guess you would say, a leader of this group. I don't want to give too much away, but ultimately a cult leader, I guess you would say. Very charming, charismatic, and he has a lot of followers. He truly believes in what he's talking about and who he is. But he's not quite what he seems either, like most of the characters in this film. But he just comes in ultimately a little bit throughout the film, but it's the third act where he appears that he just steals the show. He just has a really great part, and I'm glad they gave him a bit more of a role, because in Cabin in the Woods he doesn't last long in that film, and this one he sort of has a much bigger role within the film, and he is very charismatic, and it's probably one of the best performances I've seen by Chris Hemsworth. I've seen a lot of his movies, and I've only really liked him as Thor, but here he does a really, really great job and steals the show. There's this particular scene at the end that ultimately is, in a way, a version of Russian roulette, but with a roulette table. There's just the scenes between him and Cynthia are just really fantastic. She says a lot to him, and she sort of rattles his character a bit, and I really like that about her, that she's not scared of him. She's not scared of him being scary or pushing her around, and she says what she thinks, and she's not scared of it. And I think that's a really great sequence at the end that she gets to have an interaction with him. The other sequence I really did like, besides obviously the start bit, is this really great scene between Cynthia's Darlene and Jeff Bridges' Daniel Flynn. It's really fantastic, where she's sitting in the middle of her room and she's singing. She's sitting on a chair and she starts to sing, and she's trying to find the right song, and it takes her time. She takes her wig off, and it just feels like she's bearing her soul, that she's trying to show everyone, this is really me, this is me, and if anything happens to me, I want to go out exactly like, I want to go out as me. And it's ultimately, she begins singing a song, and the Daniel Flynn character is looking for something, and just the way that sequence is shot and put together, her singing, this intensity of the scene, the suspense, the thriller elements, is just such a well done scene. That's a brilliant scene within the film, and I think it's probably the best scene besides the third act. I think Drew Goddard is a very interesting director and writer-director, and I think he does a really great job here crafting this film. He obviously spent a bit of time trying to work this out, and I like films where there's multiple characters set in one location. You know, films like The Thing, Hateful Eight, and another film that this film reminded me of was Identity. That was a sort of little thriller that came out in the early 2000s, directed by James Mangold, and that's sort of a similar thing, where a group of strangers end up at this motel, and none of them are what they seem, and they all have their secrets. So it's very similar in that aspect. It takes a supernatural element where this film sort of doesn't, so that's where they differentiate, but it kind of is a similar feel, I guess, for the film, and that's sort of what I gathered from it. Yes, it does feel a bit Tarantino-ish, but ultimately it's not really going for that. It's not trying to be Tarantino. It just has that feel because he's set that up with his films in that sort of way. His sort of crime dramas are sort of like that, like this sort of film. It doesn't have his dialogue or anything like that, it just sort of feels a little bit like his films. Criticisms. The only real criticisms I would have about this film is the pacing's a little slow in places. It takes its time. It is a slow burner. I don't mind that it is a slow burner because you get to learn a bit more about the characters. It is long, but I don't really feel that with the film. I didn't really connect with a lot of the characters except for Jeff Bridges and Cynthia Erivo's characters. The other ones I struggled with, and like I said, Jon Hamm's not in it long enough to really get a sense of who he is as a person or a character. And the dialogue could have been a lot snappier than it was and a bit better, but it is still solid, and you do get a sense of who the characters are once they're on screen enough and you get to see their backstory. Anyway, final verdict. I really like this film. I don't know if it's going to be for everyone. If you like neo-noir sort of film, mystery films, you might enjoy that. If you like films set in one location with multiple characters, you may enjoy it as well. If you like any of the actors, you might enjoy it. Just know going in, it is a very uniquely different film. It's different to a lot of films that you have seen, and people may not like the way it goes or the length of time it takes, or there is violence in it and they may not enjoy that as well. But if you like something that's a little different, that's well made, put together, some great acting and an interesting story, you may enjoy this film. After a lot of consideration and letting this film sit with me for a while, I'm going to give this film 4.5 out of 5. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it is definitely going to be on my top 10 of the year because it was something different, much like Under the Silver Lake. It's another film that's kind of quirky and different as well, is on my list because of the idea it's refreshing. It's something different, something unique and interesting, and done really, really well. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.